you wouldn't have any officers to serve. And my statement to that was, well, if you have so many uses of excessive force and you deal with those officers who are involved in that and have so many who didn't have anyone, then that's a problem, right? And we somewhat agree in our meetings. So my question is, what are some of the trainings that you're implementing in your training program to help these officers who are younger? And we have seen trends of excessive force in the community, and they're being investigated, so not to speak about the case, but we've seen trends. This is the reason why we come as social justice activists to meetings like this, why we present at City Council, why we accept an invitation to come to meetings with law enforcement to discuss what's happening in the community, how folk are getting injured by the police. So when you talk about ask, tell, make, which is what I understand is one of the part of your curriculum for training, what steps are y'all taking to make sure that when an officer goes from ask to tell to make, that we can be assured that there will be protection and service in the community, and acts of violence and excessive force will be decreased?
So we agreed on the force part of it, not the excessive force. Your verbiage was excessive force. And I explained what that was that goes along with duty to intervene. So the uses of force.
I'm sorry.
We keep track of those. We have data for those. We know what officers have use of force incidents. When we see a pattern of that, we send those officers for extra training. And we don't do it in-house. We send them to somebody. We send them to legal schools to learn the verbiage of the excessive force or force that they're using at the time, which is reasonable and prudent at the time in the officer's mindset. The state requires us to do 21 hours of training for our officers a year, minimum each officer. We do a minimum of 35 for each officer, but our department does over 12,000 hours of training every year. So some of it is volunteer training, some of it is not. If we see something happen, one great thing for us now is we have video, we have body cameras, and that's a process. And that's why things take time. When there's any use of force incident in the police department, the sergeant reviews it, they're going to go out to the scene. If they're on their own and they can't get out there because they're on something else, the officer has to let them know that you use force at the time. So the sergeant looks at the use of force video and the paperwork that comes with it. Then it goes to the lieutenant of the shift. Then it goes to the captain of patrol. And then it goes to the deputy chief. So there's 4 sets of eyes on it. Any force that we use on any individual. And that force could be just somebody pulling away. That has to be reported. So there's a lot of different force that can be used along the way. Tasers, batons, weapons, pepper spray. So all that is looked into. So if we see something, and we have sent others for extra training on that. We work well with the Syracuse Police Academy. That's where we rate that as one of the best academies in Central New York. So we send our officers there. They get the best training because they do the force science training. They do the science behind the training and what levels they can use. You asked about ask, tell, make. That's something that they used to teach in the academy. You would ask somebody to do something, and when they didn't do it, you would tell somebody to do something, and they didn't do it, then you would make them do it. And that would align along with force. So every officer is different. Every officer in every situation is different. You'll talk to officers who will say, I usually don't have to get past the ask portion. And that comes with experience. You ask some officers, they can't get past the make. Tell. If we see somebody that's at the make all the time, we deal with it. That's a problem. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Can you explain to me what constitutes the use of excessive force? Specifically, you and I have a body part, and I honestly, no, my expectation was if an encounter between law enforcement and a civilian results in life-changing physical damage to someone, and in the best sense of judgment, the interaction from the civilian to the officer did not warrant someone winding up in the hospital or something like that, my expectation is that that would be used, seen as excessive force. But you told me that, you explained to me rather, that there are very specific definitions of what constitutes excessive force. And I imagine, that's my understanding, and others might need to know also.
So we're going to roll on with the duty to intercede. It was put in the executive order in 2019, the governor's executive order, which the duty to intercede would happen in an excessive force situation. So if somebody is using excessive force on somebody, the other officer has a duty to intercede. That is, if a person is on the ground and is laying lifeless, and an officer starts kicking them or punching them, and they're not moving, that would be excessive force. To take someone down or to use a distractionary technique such as a punch is not excessive force. It's what the officer perceives at the time while he's dealing with the incident. We can't sit back on Monday morning quarterback and say, you should have done this, because I wasn't there, I wasn't in the situation. So that's a lot of stuff that we have to look at.
Yeah, we're going to self-defense too. That's the police have a right to self-defense.
So let me get this right. So if a person is being, I'm using the word interrogated, right? Auburn PD is gone to say a domestic situation, and they're having a conversation, and the one party isn't aggressive, but maybe debating. So the officer has a right to determine how that conversation will go before excessive force is in play. So say the officer is saying something like, I need you to come with us or something like that, and then the party says, for what, I'm not doing it, and whatever, and then they go to maybe like move on or whatever the case may be. So that direction for the officer is provoking a situation to the civilian if they're, like you said, they're asked to tell the name. So they're asking them something and they're telling them. So with that conversation alone, is it putting that person in a situation that they're being provoked for it to become excessive? Because you're saying that a cop can punch somebody even if they're not physically aggressive. Am I hearing that right?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
So in a domestic situation, we would separate both parties.
Okay, let's take domestic out.
Okay.
That's fine.
In any situation, if two people going at it, we separate the parties. That's the best thing.
Okay, let's take that.
Separate the parties. So we have a right to detain people until we figure out what's going on.
Okay.
So we can put somebody in handcuffs that are not under arrest for being detained because they were involved in something.
Right.
And until we figure it out, we can put them in handcuffs, put them back in the patrol car, and figure out what's going on. Because sometimes there's an aggressor that will continue to either agitate the other person or something, and no one's going to win in that situation. Everybody's going to be yelling at the officer. You're going to want to separate the parties, and we always try to do that.
But what if it's just me and the officer, is what I'm saying, and it's a conversation, but it is agitation between both parties? Where does it separate, where the officer then rules that it is becoming excessive force for him to punch somebody or throw them down or whatever? I'm not being aggressive.
No officer is going to, I shouldn't say that, I'm going to rephrase that. If an officer was just, if you were having a conversation with somebody, and we watch a body coming forward, and you're just like, listen, I wasn't here, I wasn't there, and the officer punches you, they're going to have a problem. Like, that doesn't happen. front of the officer and tell them, well, now you took it too far. You're in public, you're screaming at the top of your lungs on the street and swear, using vulgarity, it's drawing people outside. They're gonna say, now you're gonna arrest me for your time. Now they put their hands on you, you don't comply with it. And that's my biggest thing, is the compliance part. That's where we always get into the force situation between the public and the police. It's that compliance. I'm 100% behind the judicial system. The side of the road, the hotel room is not the place to do it. It's in the court system. Let the court system play out. But once the officer tells you you're under arrest, you're under arrest. Yes, sir.